Access to Democracy is made possible by donations from the following organizations. Thomson Reuters, a global company with expertise and insight to unravel complex situations in the areas of law, tax, compliance, government, and media. Their worldwide network of journalists and editors keep customers up to speed on relevant global events. Thomson Reuters, The Answer Company. Crutchfield Dermatology, a full-service treatment center and Medi-Spa in Eagan. Their goal is to help you look good and feel great with beautiful skin. With service built around courtesy, dignity, and respect, Mayo-trained Dr. Charles Crutchfield personally treats each patient and is acknowledged as one of the nation's best physicians. The Minnesota Twins are looking forward to another great season in 2023, led by the return of All-Stars Carlos Correa and Brian Buxton. With the return of numerous players who were injured in 2022 and some new acquisitions, another division crown and a return to the World Series are in their sights. Established in 2007, 45th Parallel Spirits was among the first 50 micro-distilleries in the United States. Based in New Richmond, Wisconsin, all aspects of production occur at our facility. If you're interested in visiting and learning more about the 45th Parallel Distillery, please check our website and plan a visit to tour our facility and taste our spirits. Truestone Financial, with locations in Minnesota and Wisconsin, has proudly served its members since 1939. Truestone engages, educates, and supports its members to ensure they have the tools to empower their financial well-being. Truestone Financial, your neighborhood credit union. Learn more at truestone.org.
Welcome to Access to Democracy. This is your host, Alan Miller, and we're happy to be with you once again. You know, this program has been around for 24 years, and in that period of time, we have gained not only a reputation, but a 35-city network. Usually, we're overwhelmed with people who want to come on as guests. However, with today's guest and the company he represents, I've been chasing them for 3 years. We finally have Adam Lerner with us of Lerner Publishing, and welcome.
Thank you, Alan.
Now, Lerner Publishing is a mainstay of children's and educational books. It started over 60 years ago here in Minnesota with your dad, Harry Lerner, who I originally was chasing to come on the show, and finally we caught you in a corner and nailed you. Tell us about the history of Lerner Books.
Sure, Alan. Well, congratulations on the success of your show. Yeah, you did finally get us, and it wasn't easy, but happy to be here. So, Lerner Publishing Group, we have an interesting history how my father, Harry, started the company. He was in the occupation forces in Germany, in the U.S. Army, in the 50s, so after the war, obviously, and he was stationed there, and one of his jobs there was a driver to drive around a colonel. So he drove this colonel all around, and around that time, a lot of GIs were traveling Europe and seeing different things. Some of them were buying cars. And my dad had an idea that he was going to write a travel guide for GIs. And he did that. He spent time, on his own after hours writing this travel guide. And he brought it to Stars and Stripes, which is, the U.S. Forces publication arm.
Right.
And they were pretty supportive of him. He talks about how he went there. He was just really a young kid in his 20s, and the man there kind of took him under his wing and believed him and published this travel guide for my dad, and it was a good experience. I think it went on to sell, something like 10,000 copies. And so my dad had a good experience with publishing, and that was really his first experience. As an aside, another GI had the same idea, and that was Fodor. So Fodor, it went on and became a a brand name in travel books.
Yeah, it's
So-
either photo or Fromer today if you're doing any traveling at all. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So my dad wasn't the only one who had that idea, and wasn't the only one that launched a publishing business from it. But after my dad's service was up and he returned to Minnesota, he went to the doctor's office for some routine checkup or something. And he noticed children there, sort of bored, tugging on their mother, with nothing to do. And his idea was that he was going to now publish books about medical issues and sell them to doctors' offices' waiting rooms. And, it's an entrepreneurial way of thinking. He just saw something and reacted, and that is very much my dad. He's kind of, he's a reactive person. He reacts quickly to things, and he moves quickly. So my dad had his older brother was a physician, and he was also married to a physician. So my father asked her, his husband's wife, if she would write books about different medical issues. One of them was Michael gets the measles. I think it's I can't remember the other name, mumps, diseases that we actually no longer have. So my dad published these books. He sent out flyers and mailings to doctors' offices, hoping that orders would come flowing in, and they didn't. Actually, they weren't very interested in that. It didn't actually really solve the problem he had intended. But it was starting to get into the Great Generation era of Lyndon Johnson and Great Society, and they were the government was putting more money into schools and school libraries, and they were building school libraries. Now almost all schools have their own libraries, and there's a lot about that in the news right now, actually.
Unfortunately, because censorship is a disease that permeates the right wing of this country.
Well, publishers in general, we typically are against censorship. Almost any publisher you would speak to is. But to finish the story, so orders started to actually come in for these books from school libraries. The company at the time was called Lerner Medical Books for Children. But orders came in from school libraries and public libraries looking to bolster their children's collections. And my dad changed the name then to Lerner Publications at the time, and started publishing books for school libraries, not necessarily medical books anymore. And that was really the genesis of the company.
And the company has gone on to become one of the largest publishers of basically children's and educational books any place right now.
Well, you could say we're one of the largest independent children's books publishers. There are some very large conglomerates, that publish books. There's Scholastic, which is publicly traded. So there's some very large companies, but we're definitely one of the largest independent, family-owned children's books publisher.
And certainly very well known, not only here in Minnesota, and I take it your dad is a native Minnesotan, and I know that you are.
That's right. My dad's from the north side of Minneapolis.
Unusual for all of us who are outsiders who found this as the place to have a good home, who came from other places, and that is unusual. And your dad is still active today, but you have taken over the business.
That's right.
So let's have a little bit of your background.
Well, my background, I grew up in a family business. My mother, who passed away many years ago, was involved in the business as well. So, like a lot of children of entrepreneurs and founders of companies, I was exposed to the business. We talked a lot about it. I met a lot of my dad's colleagues. I would go down to the office, which is still in the North Loop, or the Warehouse District, it used to be called. And so I was familiar with the business, and it really is a great business, book publishing. You work with so many different kinds of people, from creative people, authors, artists, photographers, to business people. You meet many people, many international book publishers, production people. So it was always been an interesting business to me, but you know, I'm the oldest child. My dad and I, you know, as the oldest son and a father, sometimes didn't always agree on things growing up, but we did agree that I should go off somewhere else and work to see if this was really the right business for me. So after I graduated from the University of Minnesota, I had an art history degree. That was my major. I moved to New York, and I didn't know anybody really there. I worked at Barnes & Noble for a little bit as a sales clerk, and then I found a job in a big publisher called Macmillan, which is still a publisher.
Yes,
although,
it is.
Yeah. And I started as an assistant and worked my way up there a little bit for several years, and then I saw an opening at a smaller independent publishing company called Farrar, Straus & Giroux, FSG, and it was run by a legendary publisher, Roger Strauss. And I was lucky enough to get that job working as the sub-rights manager, subsidiary rights manager. And I worked there for about 5 years, and it was a great experience, and it worked out very well for me. It didn't have to work out, but it's sort of every time, you know, I got frustrated or was losing patience, something good would happen to me in publishing, and
And then it was time to come home.
Well, my dad had heart bypass surgery. This was in 1991. No, I'm sorry. In 1998. And he asked me to come home at that point. And, you know, I had liked New York. My older son was born in New York, but it was important to come home at that point.
The rest, as they say, is history.
Correct.
Now, one of the things that Lerner Publishing has done is gotten very involved in civic and charitable endeavors. Another thing that you've done during the pandemic, you launched on Netflix something called Chico Bonbon, Monkey with a Tool Belt. And what was the inspiration for that?
Well, so Monkey with a Tool Belt is a series of picture books written and illustrated by Chris Monroe, who's a well-known author and cartoonist, actually, in Duluth. So everyone knows Chris in Duluth. She created a cartoon called Violet Days that was published in the Star Tribune. But we published her first picture book, and then Chris had an idea to do this series called Monkey with a Tool Belt. And the monkey is named Chico Bonbon. So Netflix came to us, they were interested in this, and they licensed the rights from us, and we worked with Chris, and it's been on Netflix for one season, I think 2 seasons now, and they've changed the name to call it Chico Bonbon, but the book series, and it's still selling well, it's called Monkey with a Tool Belt, and there's, I think, 10 different books in that series now.
And that was during the pandemic that it launched, though, right?
Yes, it was. But these deals take time, so it was started before the pandemic.
Now, you won the 2020 Minnesota Book Award for children's books. Is that right?
Very possibly. We've won numerous Minnesota Book Awards.
And you've won numerous awards, period.
We have.
Yeah, you've been very well recognized, really as a premier in what you do. And we're very lucky to have you right here in Minnesota. Minnesota's so outstanding in many ways, and we have so many wonderful writers in Minnesota, disproportionate amount of writers and novelists and other writers. And I certainly put Lerner Publishing up there with all those unique Minnesota qualities. And tell me about the Vonda Nelson Scholarship.
Well, sure. So Vonda Michelle Nelson, she is a longtime Lerner author. She was a children's librarian for many years in New Mexico. She's an African-American woman. We've worked with Vonda, as I said, for many years. She's a friend of mine. Her book one of her early books was really one of the first books that we were recognized nationally for awards. It won a Coretta Scott King, I believe it was an illustrator honor at that time. Vonda's books, another one of Vonda's books that we've published actually won the Coretta Scott King Award for writing. We've won another one for illustration. So the Coretta Scott King Award has always been a special award for us and for me as publisher. And Vonda's been a special person for our company. She's a wonderful person, a very thoughtful person. And Hamlin is one of only 2 programs in the country that has an MFA program, a Master's of Fine Arts, specifically for children's and young adult writing. The other one, I think, is in Vermont. So I have a colleague whose mother was involved with that program, and we got to know that program. And we thought it was a wonderful opportunity to sponsor a scholarship honoring Vonda that would subsidize tuition in that program for a minority author. And that's what we've always done. We've done it, I think, for 9 years. I will say this, that we've suspended that program for 1 year. I've spoken to Vonda about it, and her and I talked about it. And we both were very disappointed with how Hamlin handled this incident in October.
As were we all.
So I've just last week told Hamlin that we're suspending that program for a year, really as a protest. And it's too bad. It was a very difficult decision because, we know a deserving student is going to miss out. But
the other side of the coin is you have gone out of your way to serve underserved communities and children. The social conscience of Lerner Publishing is well known. And as a matter of fact, you have an Adopt a Classroom program that I just recently read about. What is that?
Yeah, that's a new program. Adopt a Classroom is another Minnesota organization that gives parents a chance to subsidize classroom purchasing. So we're working with them to make our books available on their website so that parents can purchase the books and donate them to their classrooms.
And how about the PJ Library? What's that?
PJ Library is a very interesting program founded by a man named Harold Grinspoon from Springfield, Massachusetts. And what Harold's vision is to provide Jewish children's books with Jewish themes and subjects, sending them to Jewish families all around the country and all around the globe, actually, now to support Jewish identity, literacy, And
to the tune of about 1,600 books a month.
it's an incredible organization, really is, and Harold's an incredible man.
How about Avivo? What's that?
Avivo is Avivo Village is a homeless transition shelter, you could say. Our warehouse is in Minneapolis, just outside the North Loop. We outgrew that warehouse and are now, our books are distributed out of Mankato by Taylor Corporation. That's been a terrific partnership. But when our warehouse became empty, we were approached by initially a community organization that had a vision to create a homeless shelter. And Avivo is a great organization that got involved and sort of professionalized that. And they built, using CARES Act money, built within our old warehouse 100 mini homes. So people that are homeless are brought in. You know, they have often addiction issues or some mental health issues, and they're brought in, they're given their own space to live, they're given support to improve their life and their choices, and we're very proud to be associated with Avivo. They've helped a lot of people.
And this, to me, is just so indicative of the fact that here is Lerner Publishing, basically under the radar, but involved in so many things that involve children, underserved communities, minorities, things like that. A social conscience, which has to be something that's instilled starting with your father and carried through with you right through to the present day. It's so important in a very diverse and partisan atmosphere that we live in today, that there is an organization that looks to children, looks to diversity, looks to education. I really have to commend you on that.
Well, thank you, Alan.
Now, we have 5 minutes left, so we can talk about censorship. Has that hit you at all in any of your books? It's a frightening thing to me to have people coming in, as much as one erratic parent making a complaint to a library and then pulling a book off the shelves, like House, which is regaled all over the world as a great book, and one parent can control, one minority can control really the majority and deprive students, children of that book.
Well, as I said, it's very rare you'll find a publisher that supports censorship. We're very against it. It's against what we do. We have had books banned. The funny thing is about getting a book banned, sometimes books end up selling better and they get publicity. So there's sort of a silver lining in a way that it actually is counterproductive censorship in a way. And, you know, for me, developing critical thinking is important. We need to be exposed to ideas and history and things that we might not agree with. But that's part of our open society, and it's very, very important.
And if we shut that down, we're really doing a disservice to all of society, in my opinion. So really, one wants to get on the bandwagon, B-A-N-N-E-D.
Okay.
I'll give you that as a slogan.
Yeah. Well, it is. I've never seen it like this in the 30 years I've been in publishing, and we're very much against that. You know, individual communities should make choices, but to pull books off a shelf is, you know, those books are being chosen by librarians that are trained to make these kinds of choices. So we don't like to see it.
That's an understatement. I mean, you could pull out a soapbox here, and I can start with abortion or anything else that who are we to tell women what to do with their bodies, et cetera, but I won't get on my liberal soapbox at the moment. It's just, it's been incredible having the opportunity to learn all this about Lerner Publishing, and to see that you're carrying on in really Harry's footsteps. And Harry's still there looking over your shoulder, I know that. I don't know why it took 3 years for us to get you on the show, but I hope it's not the last time. And it's really been very, very awe-inspiring, and for our people to know that an organization like yours exists and what it does and the social conscience of it is so important. Do you have any thoughts? We still have a couple of minutes here. Do you have any thoughts about the publishing business or where we are in society?
Well, the publishing business, as I said, it's a great business. We have a lot of young people in our company now. If you would have asked me 10 years ago, I was concerned that young people wouldn't be interested in book publishing. But when we have openings, we get many applicants. Young people are interested in it. It's great to see. It's very gratifying. And it really is a special business. And it's crucial to our democracy, really, and open society.
It's so crucial. Education, learning, books. We learned enough about burning books back in 1938, and that era. Taking them off the shelves is just as bad as burning them. Imposing your will on somebody else's choice to read is also something that, to me, is intolerable. And it has been a pleasure to have you here and to learn all about what Lerner Publishing does. And I thank you so much for coming in and sharing with us. And I can only say keep it up and good luck in the future.
Thank you, Alan.